Rain slid down the tall glass windows of the riverside cafe, each droplet blurring the world beyond into watercolor streaks of gray and gold. Inside, the warm glow of amber pendant lights softened the edges of the bustling crowd. The air smelled faintly of roasted coffee beans and freshly baked pastries, but for Claire, the scent could not calm the restless beating of her heart. She sat at a corner table, absently tracing the rim of her cappuccino cup, the diamond on her left hand catching the light with every movement. It wasn't just any ring, it was the promise of a future with Michael Stone, the man she loved. Michael wasn't just any man. He was a figure people whispered about in hushed tones, the self-made millionaire who'd climbed from nothing to the top of the real estate world. His name had been on magazine covers, his signature on contracts worth more than most could earn in a lifetime. Yet behind the tailored suits and the confident posture, Claire knew there was a man who carried a quiet, unhealed grief. He rarely spoke of it, but when he did, it was like watching sunlight touch a deep ocean trench, fleeting, yet illuminating something immeasurably vast and dark beneath. Claire had caught glimpses of that hidden sorrow in small moments, the way Michael sometimes lingered near the children's section at bookstores, his eyes fixed on nothing, the way his smile faltered when a little boy with messy brown hair ran past in the park. He had told her, once, about his son, a little boy named Ethan, but the details had been scarce, his voice too tight to press for more. All she knew was that years ago, long before the wealth, Michael had fought for custody and lost. The boy's mother had taken Ethan away, and despite private investigators, legal battles, and sleepless nights, Michael never found him again. It was a wound time hadn't healed. The bell above the cafe door chimed, pulling Claire's gaze from her thoughts. A young boy stepped inside, shaking the rain from his hair. He couldn't have been more than 15. His jacket was too thin for the season, frayed at the sleeves, the zipper broken halfway up. His jeans were faded, the knees nearly white from wear. But it wasn't his clothing that made Claire's breath catch, it was his face. He had a restless energy about him, shifting his weight from foot to foot, scanning the cafe as though searching for someone. Strands of dark brown hair fell messily over his forehead, and when he brushed them aside, Claire's heart skipped. There was something in his eyes, a warm hazel flecked with gold, that she had seen before. Not in person, but in the lone photograph Michael kept on his desk at home, the one of him holding a chubby-cheeked toddler with those same eyes. Claire's fingers tightened around her cup. She didn't want to assume, didn't want to raise false hope. But the resemblance was undeniable. She leaned forward slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Michael," she began, but he was still scrolling through his phone, distracted by business emails even on a rainy Saturday afternoon. She touched his arm, her tone urgent now. "Michael, look at the boy by the counter." He glanced up lazily at first, then his eyes found the boy. In that instant, something changed. The color drained from Michael's face, and the phone slipped from his hand onto the table with a muted thud. Claire leaned closer, her voice trembling. "He looks like your lost son." Michael's jaw tightened, his shoulders stiffening as though bracing for impact. His eyes didn't leave the boy. "What did you say?" he asked, though she knew he had heard her perfectly the first time. "I said, he looks like Ethan." For a moment, Michael didn't breathe. His chest rose, then stalled, as if the air itself had turned to stone inside him. Memories, both treasured and tormenting, flickered in his gaze. The boy's crooked smile as he ordered something at the counter. The way he fiddled with the sleeves of his jacket, pulling at a loose thread. The same restless habit Ethan had at 4 years old, when Michael had read him bedtime stories. Michael's hands curled into fists on the table. "It's impossible," he muttered, though his voice cracked. "It's been too long." He trailed off, calculating silently. 15, Claire finished softly. The same age as the boy standing under the warm cafe lights, shifting awkwardly as the barista slid a steaming mug toward him. Michael's eyes darted to the boy's profile, the sharp angle of his jawline, the faint dimple that appeared when he murmured a polite "thank you" to the barista. It was like watching a ghost come to life. Without another word, Michael rose from the table. Claire could see his pulse racing at his neck, the tension in his broad shoulders. He took a step forward, then stopped, frozen between fear and hope. What if it wasn't Ethan? What if approaching him shattered the fragile possibility into 1,000 jagged pieces? But what if it was? Michael took a slow breath, his shoes silent against the wooden floor as he crossed the cafe. Every step felt heavy, as if he were wading through the years between then and now, the courtrooms, the unanswered calls, the birthdays marked by silence. The boy stood by the condiment station, spooning sugar into his cup, unaware that his world was about to change. Michael stopped a few feet away, his voice low, uncertain. "Hey, kid," he said. The boy turned, and in that moment, Michael saw the whole past rush back at him. The first time he'd held Ethan in the hospital, the way his son had once laughed so hard milk spilled from his nose, the last time he'd hugged him before the custody battle tore them apart. The boy's hazel eyes met his, a flicker of confusion passing through them. "Ah, yeah," the boy replied, guarded but not unfriendly. Michael swallowed hard, every nerve in his body screaming to blurt out the question, but his throat tightened. Instead, he said softly, "You look familiar." The boy shrugged, glancing away, but Michael saw it, the same faint scar above his left eyebrow, the one Ethan had gotten when he tripped on the backyard steps at age 3. Claire, watching from the table, could barely breathe. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing: she had just witnessed the moment Michael's life began to shift, as though the universe itself had paused the rain outside to bring a lost soul in from the storm. The boy hesitated under Michael's steady gaze, shifting from foot to foot as if the floor were too hot to stand still on. Outside, the rain drummed harder against the cafe windows, sealing them into this strange, charged moment. The warmth of the room felt suddenly stifling, the smell of coffee too thick, every sound amplified, the clink of a spoon in a nearby cup, the hiss of milk steaming behind the counter. Michael kept his voice calm, though his heart was beating hard enough to hurt. "I'm Michael," he said, extending a hand. The boy's eyes darted to it warily, then back to Michael's face, searching for intent. "Daniel," he replied after a pause, his voice soft but steady. His handshake was quick, almost reluctant, the kind of touch from someone not used to being treated with trust. "Do you live around here?" Michael asked, trying not to sound like he was interrogating him. Daniel shrugged. "Sort of. I move around a lot." He lifted his cup for a sip, using it as an excuse to look away. Claire had joined them now, stepping up quietly beside Michael, her presence gentle but grounding. She offered Daniel a small smile. "You came in out of the rain, that's smart. It's getting nasty out there." Daniel nodded politely but didn't elaborate. Something about him was closed off yet alert, like a stray animal always ready to bolt. Michael gestured toward their table. "Why don't you sit with us for a bit? We just ordered, and there's more than enough." For a moment, Daniel looked toward the door, as if weighing the quickest escape route. Then, with a sigh, he followed them back to their corner. He sat on the edge of the chair, his posture tense, one hand curled protectively around his cup. They started with small talk: where he went to school he didn't, where his parents were. A long silence before he mumbled, "Not here," and whether he had somewhere safe to go that night. Another shrug, eyes fixed on the table. It took time, but slowly, his story began to spill out in fragments, like a puzzle thrown on the floor. His mother, he said, had been everything, until she wasn't. She'd worked double shifts, sometimes gone for days, leaving him with a man Daniel never called by name. That man drank too much and had a temper that flared like a match in gasoline. Daniel had learned quickly that silence and staying out of sight were his best defenses. When Michael asked where his mother was now, Daniel's gaze went distant. "Gone," he said finally, his voice hollow. "I don't know where. I left one night, didn't look back." Claire's throat tightened. She could see Michael gripping the edge of the table, his knuckles pale. The parallels were too strong, the pieces lining up in ways that made her chest ache. Michael took a careful breath. Daniel, did you ever live somewhere near Fairview? About 10 years ago. Daniel frowned, as if trying to remember. Fairview. Yeah, for a while. Why? The air between them thickened. Claire watched Michael study the boy's face as if memorizing every feature. Then Michael glanced toward the small scar above Daniel's eyebrow, that faint, familiar mark. Did you get that scar from falling down some steps? Michael asked. Daniel froze. Yeah, he said slowly. I was really little. My mom told me I was chasing a ball in the backyard. I don't even remember it. Michael's hand trembled slightly. He could remember it vividly. The warm summer afternoon, the sharp cry of pain, the way his heart had dropped as he scooped his son into his arms, rushing inside for ice and bandages. Ethan had been 3 years old, tears streaking his cheeks, and Michael had promised, "You're okay, buddy. I've got you." Claire leaned forward gently. Daniel, have you ever seen this before? She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, opening a photo she'd taken of the framed picture in Michael's study, the one of a younger Michael cradling a laughing toddler with hazel eyes. She slid it across the table. Daniel's eyes fell on it, and for a heartbeat, his expression didn't change. Then something shifted, recognition creeping in like dawn breaking. His hand moved to touch the screen, his fingers brushing over the child's face. That's me, he whispered. Michael's world tilted. The sound of rain outside seemed to fade, replaced by the rush of his own pulse in his ears. Daniel, he said, his voice barely holding together, your name used to be Ethan. Ethan Stone. I'm your father. Daniel's eyes snapped up, disbelief written in every line of his face. No, no, my mom, he trailed off, his breathing quickening. She said you didn't want me. That you left us. The words sliced through Michael's chest like glass. That's not true, he said quickly, urgently. I fought for you, Ethan. I fought until I had nothing left to fight with. Your mom, she left. She took you away from me. His voice broke. On the last words, Daniel sat rigid, torn between the walls he'd built and the crack that was now widening in them. He glanced at Claire, whose eyes brimmed with tears, then back at Michael, whose face was raw with a hope so fragile it hurt to look at. I don't know what to believe, Daniel said finally, his voice shaking. Believe this, Michael said, leaning forward, his hands flat on the table so the boy could see they were steady. I never stopped loving you. Not one day. I've looked for you for years. And now, here you are. The cafe around them blurred into background noise. Daniel's hands tightened around his cup, his knuckles white. A lifetime of questions battled in his eyes. Then, without warning, he reached into his backpack and pulled out something small, a worn, frayed piece of fabric. It was a blue baby blanket, the kind made for cribs, edges ragged from years of use. My mom kept this, he said quietly. She told me it was mine, but never said where it came from. Michael's breath caught. I gave that to you. On the day you were born. His hand hovered over the blanket, as if afraid touching it would make it vanish. Something inside Daniel broke, not in pain, but in the slow, overwhelming realization that maybe the truth had always been just out of reach. His eyes brimmed with tears he didn't try to hide. Michael didn't push, didn't move closer without permission. But when Daniel's shoulders sagged, as if letting go of years of fear, Michael opened his arms in silent offering. The boy hesitated only a moment before stepping into them. It wasn't the triumphant reunion Michael had dreamed of. There was still years to heal, truths to untangle, but it was real. It was now, and it was theirs. Claire watched as father and son clung to each other, the rain outside finally beginning to ease. She knew life would never be the same after this. One chance encounter, one whispered observation, had rewritten everything.